Mesdames, Mesdemoiselles et Messieurs, chers amis téléspectateurs, bonsoir. Vous êtes à l'écoute de La Vérité Présente, un programme de l'École du Sabbat qui vous présente les leçons chaque semaine. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue. J'ai le plaisir de rencontrer les auteurs de la leçon du trimestre, Dr. Claudio Consuegra and his wife, Pamela Consuegra. Good morning, Dr. Pamela. Good morning, Dr. Claudio. I would like to ask you what inspired you to write the lesson for the family.
Pastor, thank you so much for having us in your program. It is our honor to have you here at the headquarters of the North American Division and to talk about the lesson that God gave us an invitation to write. You're right, some families are having great difficulties. I don't want to say that all families, some families are doing very well and they're thriving, but many families are going through a lot of challenges in their life. We didn't set out to write the Sabbath School lesson. We didn't ask to write the lesson, but rather we were asked to write the lesson. About 5 years ago, the editor of the Sabbath School lesson for adults, Clifford Goldstein, asked us if we would write the lesson on families. The last time that we had a lesson on families was in the year 2006. Ron and Karen Flowers, who were then the General Conference Directors for Family Ministries, were the authors of that and the previous two as well. So it's been 13 years since we had the last Sabbath School lesson for families. And again, we were asked to write it and to devote one whole quarter to the topic of the family.
And as we considered the topic of family, of course, the next question is, what do we focus it on? What will the Sabbath School lessons really entail? And we decided to name it Family Seasons, because as we think about the family, we think about all the transitions that families go through from birth to death. We think about the transition period into parenting, about choosing a life partner, or about those unexpected times of loss, or the times of conflict. And so we decided to really focus on all of those transitions and all of those, if you will, seasons of the family.
As a specialist in family, as a therapist in family, how can you explain to the auditors why when people are married and then sometimes they feel like they're living alone in the home, or they're living alone, even though they're married, the spouse is present, but they feel like they're having a lonely life?
Well, it's a very good question, Pastor, and it seems to be the situation for many couples. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, how did they get to that point? Well, it seems like when they were dating before marriage, they spent a lot of time together and they spent a lot of time talking. But once they got married, they became so comfortable with each other that they stopped doing the things that they were doing before. So one of the things that we tell couples is to renew that relationship, to develop true intimacy by spending quality time together. And when I say together, we mean without anybody else, including children. Mm-hmm. Sometimes couples turn to their children when they're born and give them all their attention and begin to neglect one another. Now, it doesn't mean that you abandon the children in order to take care of one another. The kids need the time and the care that obviously they can't do for themselves. But what we say is you need to be intentional about taking care of your relationship. In fact, we say the best gift you can give your children is a healthy relationship with one another, a healthy marriage.
Dr. Claudio, I believe that you are right. And if I understand correctly, in order to keep the flame of the honeymoon, so the couples, they need to spend time together if they want to keep the flame. And as I always tell people, I've been married for 33 years, and I'm still in my honeymoon.
Yeah, wonderful.
Good for you.
So I believe that you are right. Dr. Pamela, as you know, because we're talking about the different seasons, we are facing a lot of changes in the family model, at home, the way my parents used to educate me. They used to teach me things about anything. Nowadays, we see a shift in the way parents educate the children. So as a specialist, what can you do? What can you tell the viewers about parenting? Because I believe that it is not that easy than your time and my time. In this new generation, I don't think it is the same. It's that easy. What can you tell the viewers about parenting?
Well, you're absolutely right. In fact, from the research we have done, we have discovered that parenting is the #1 issue that families face today. It's the biggest challenge because if you think about it, parenting is indeed different. My grandmother and even my mother did not have to deal with the challenges of technology, the challenges of media that our families are faced with today. And so if I'm a new mom today with a child, it's very difficult because I cannot go to my grandmother or even my mother and ask the question, Mom, how did you handle this? Because the reality is they didn't have to handle that. They didn't have to handle Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, WhatsApp, the video games, and we can go on with the challenges that media faces. And so as a parent today, we really need to go back to Scripture because the truth is those principles in the Bible really are timeless. Those beautiful texts in Deuteronomy that tell us, talk about them when you stand up, when you sit down, when you lie down, when you go along the road. And so those principles of modeling Christ and reflecting Christ to our children and taking up the mantle once again of discipling our children and understanding that it is not a job that we need to relegate to the pastor, to the church school teacher. And although all of those things should support us and reinforce the values and principles we're teaching at home, the truth is that we are still the primary disciple makers of our children.
Talking about the challenges that we are facing as parents, there is one lesson I appreciate the most in the whole quarterly. It is what have the seen in your house. Mm-hmm. I believe that is very important. The children, while they're growing up in the home, they have to see the good habits, the parents have to impact them with good influence. So what do people see in the house? So I don't know if you can give us a little detail to elaborate on it a little bit for the viewers. What have they seen in your house?
Well, so often we think we can't preach a sermon, or perhaps we can't give a Bible study, but we fail to understand the words of the prophet are so true, where she says, Mrs. White says, more powerful than any sermon that you can preach is the influence of your home. So what have they seen in your house? What do our neighbors see? What do our extended family members and what do our friends see? Because we need to realize we are indeed preaching a sermon. In fact, our homes are an ongoing evangelistic series that we preach every day. What are we preaching? And what are others seeing in our homes?
Pastor, often what we see in North America, and I'm sure in other parts of the world, is families where there is abuse. Husbands are beating up on their wives. Parents are beating their children or yelling at them. There's sexual abuse. Not only that, but we're also seeing the technology invading the home, for instance, in the form of pornography. It's coming into the homes of Christian men, Christian women, and children. You know, some research shows that the first age of exposure to pornography is about 5 years of age, and some boys are already addicted to pornography by the age of 8. So when we ask the question, what have they seen in your home? We have to ask ourselves, what is our home like? What do people see in our home? Beginning with our children, are they seeing a harmonious home, or are they seeing a lot of anger and hatred, a lot of abuse? Are they seeing corruption? Are they seeing pornographic images? What are they seeing? That is a very serious question for us, especially as we near the last days. In fact, we are in the last days already. What kind of testimony, what kind of witness are we giving, not only to our children, but to those around us? See, we think that if we bring people into our home, we want to show them the large screen TV or the brand new car or the brand new fashionable clothes that we're wearing. Those things wear away. They waste away. But are they seeing a character that reflects the image of God? Are they seeing people who, by their love, reflect the love of God? That's a question that we have to ask ourselves, and therefore answer to God and to those who watch us accordingly.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the answer, for the response. So the most important thing is to be a model for our children, because they're watching us. They are watching us, so we got to be careful on what we are watching, what we are seeing, what we are saying at home. So that's very good. I believe that for our viewers, I believe that this is very important. As Christian parents, we have to be sure, we have to do all our best to give a good example, to be a model for our children, instead of telling them not to use this book, not to do this, not to do that. So they are watching us to see if, as parents, if we are doing what we tell them not to do. That's very good. And the last question I have, as you know, we have to turn our heart. Another word, we have to straight, or we have to clean our heart, because we are living at the end. What can you tell more about this?
Well, Pastor, as you probably remember, Jesus said, I didn't come, or I came to bring a sword, of the Father against the Son, etc. And we think, well, what does that mean? Well, unfortunately, sometimes our own faith divides families because we experience it differently. Part of what we want to do with this Sabbath school lesson and our ministry for families is to try to bring them together. But it really comes to our individual faith and our individual behavior first. So as we begin to talk to couples, to married couples, we want to remind them of Ephesians Chapter 5, verse 25, where Paul says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her in order to sanctify her. So one of the things that we say is that God created marriage not only to have children, but as a demonstration of the relationship between Christ and his church. Therefore, we as husbands need to act toward our wives the same way that Christ acts toward the church. Then when our relationship with Christ and our relationship with each other is strong, then we can turn to our children and relate to them in the same way that God the Father relates to us as his children. See, the family is a demonstration of our relationship with God and with Christ. So what we hope this lesson will accomplish is a closer relationship with Christ and with God the Father through the Holy Spirit, but also a closer relationship between us as husband and wives, and also between us as parents and children.
I believe that this lesson will make a big impact in our family. This lesson will transform our families, and to make every one of us be ready for the coming of Jesus, because we have to stay connected and be connected, because Jesus Christ is coming soon. If you want to have more details, if you want to have more questions, you can visit my website, etienneministry.org, or you can email me at etienneministry@gmail.com. And thank you for being a part of the Present Truth, La Vérité Présente.